Hello, and welcome to the Cortright Cast, Episode 8, your one-stop shop for a semi-intelligent discourse surrounding everything from science fiction, fantasy, Hollywood, books, and everything in between. Today, we're talking about John Boyega's recent comments surrounding his involvement in the Star Wars franchise and his desire to not be involved in it anymore. Marvel's Avengers video game, which came out, I think it was only like a couple months ago, has already completely tanked and lost the company millions and millions of dollars, supposedly, as well as A Quiet Place is a franchise now. They have greenlit a spinoff movie, and I'm interested to see how that pans out. But and then in final news, we're talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is going to be remaking The Scorpion King. Interesting topics today, to say the least. So my name is Alex Cortright, and I'm your host, and I'm joined by my brother, the other half of the Cortright cast, Jonathan Cortright. Let's get right into it. So I don't know if you've seen the comments. We've seen John Boyega talking about his involvement in the Star Wars franchise for kind of a few months now, so it's not exactly like brand new news, but there have been a few new articles kind of coming out surrounding, I guess, his comments coming more and more to light. He said, the gist of his comments were that he felt like Disney did not know what to do with his character. Mm-hmm. Most specifically, he specified with a character of color.
Yeah.
And
well, didn't they remove him from the China poster?
Yeah, I want to say it's kind of a black and white subject, and it's also a kind of complicated subject because I feel like there are a lot of like elements to it. None of them make it work. Yeah. Like a lot of elements that make it not work at all. But most specifically, obviously they just didn't know what to do with his character, and that could very easily have to do with his ethnicity. Because, like you said, they removed him from the Chinese poster, and obviously that's a bad look. They must make so much money from China that they're just like, it's so many companies just are so beholden to China. It blows my mind. But also because this isn't a defense of Disney because it's disparaging of Disney, but Disney didn't know what to do with most of the characters in that movie, or in that entire series. So it's like, I definitely agree with what he's saying and understand where he's coming from. And also it's like, dude, that's not just you.
Yeah. Well, I do think he got the shortest end of the stick, though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
I mean, you had an opportunity with like a truly unique character. Like, to my knowledge, or at least with the films, you've never seen like a stormtrooper before. Yeah. Or like you never really got to know anything about a stormtrooper before. So you have this, John Boyega, who's such a charismatic actor. You've got him in this really interesting role, and probably the one really unique role in the new movies of like the main three. Because Poe fills the sort of Han Solo character, and Rey fills the the sort of Luke character, and John Boyega had a really interesting place as like a stormtrooper who turns into a rebel, or whatever they call it, resistance or whatever.
Same thing.
So, and he was the character that I was most disappointed in what they did with.
It's because, kind of like you said, but to take it down a little bit further, we had Poe. Poe was a part of kind of the advertisements, the way the posters for the films, but it was really Daisy Ridley and John Boyega that were the big new casting announcements. Like, we knew that Oscar Isaac was in the movie and he was going to play like a pilot, but it wasn't like, because at the time I was still a massive Star Wars fan and was really following it closely because I was like, this new movie's coming out. This is back when people still had hope for the franchise and so forth. And but it was like, okay, they've got this new guy. He's like, John Boyega's really cool. He's an up and coming actor. And, I'm pretty sure even some of the promos like showed him with a lightsaber. And we always wondered what that meant, what that was, if they were going to do fake out stuff. Is he a Jedi? Is he not? But basically it just created such a buzz around the character. And we all just expected, it's like we didn't even know what to expect. We expected something cool. And then they gave us something cool. Like, I think actually I think John Boyega's arc might be one of the most interesting, not just one of the most interesting characters in the series, or the most potential, but like, it was also just like the most unique part of that film. in regards to doing something different that Star Wars hadn't done. That like The Force Awakens being the first in the trilogy was retreading so many paths that we'd seen before. And John Boyega's arc in that first movie, you know, they probably could have done better in the first movie, but it was the second and third movie that they really fell off the rails. The first movie actually set him up nicely, even if they didn't take him as far as they could have, but they really set him up to be something. So the way that they really just botched it is it makes absolutely no sense, especially because they built him up. It was like this big casting announcement. John Boyega is going to be in the movie. He's going to be one of the main characters. And then they so quickly just threw him off the boat and switched over to Rey. And it's strange because I don't feel like there was that much hype around Rey after the first movie. It wasn't like they were switching their ideas as they went, which, I mean, we all know that one of the biggest problems with that trilogy was that they didn't know what they were doing every single film. They're like, what's going to happen now? We have no idea.
Well, I think Rian Johnson especially took way more interest in Kylo Ren. If you look at the way that Last Jedi was constructed as opposed to Force Awakens.
But Kylo still had a major arc in Force Awakens.
He did, but also Rian Johnson separated Rey and or no, he didn't, because Rey was already separated. But he definitely didn't bring them back together because they're not together at all in that movie. And he went way more on the Rey and Kylo route. He really set that up in that movie. Yeah. Whereas he left. That was actually my biggest. I'm not a big like hater of The Last Jedi, but that was always my biggest gripe with that movie was everything to do with John Boyega, Rose, and that like casino planet was the worst part of that movie. That was what brought that movie down for me. I actually was okay with a lot of the other stuff. That was what I hated, and it was partly because I loved John Boyega's character in The Force Awakens, and I felt like he was just wasting time throughout. Yeah, well, in The Force Awakens, you bring up a couple things that I want to look at. Is The Force Awakens, if anything, one of the things that the second movie and the third movie did not capture at all was that even with The Force Awakens and any of its plot problems or the fact that it was retreading old movies, wasn't very original, was that it really had a magic to it. Not just in the way that Abrams filmed it and the way that he brought back a lot of the nostalgia of Star Wars, but also in just that I felt like the actors were all really on point in that movie. Like the script felt good. The dialogue felt good. It was snappy. It really had a flow. Like you can criticize the story, but I didn't feel like there was a lot to criticize like on a scene by scene basis. But the other thing that you mentioned that I just popped into my head when you said it was that they separated the characters in the second movie. This is something I think I've talked about on this YouTube channel before, at least lightly touched on. Why do these stories, so many movies, books, stories of all kinds, why are they so addicted to separating all the characters that we love the most from each other and their chemistry that we love about them? Why are these writers so addicted to separating them? I know it's like a tenet it seems like a story plot structure tenet that's like written in some book about how to write a good story that people just blindly follow or something, or they just don't know what. I'm just confused. It's a quick change that lets you know and you're in a different story now. But they did it in the original trilogy, especially with Empire Strikes Back. They separated them.
So many movies.
Stranger Things, it's one of the staples of Stranger Things is one of the kids is not going to be with the rest of them.
Why though? Why? Why is it so popular? It's so popular, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of getting addicted or attracted to these different characters and really loving these. Like, it's different if you build a few characters and you need them to have separate plots and then they come together in a really exciting and rewarding way in like one movie. But consistently across entire series, separating characters that, in my opinion, thrive on their chemistry. Like, honestly, if you even just look at, the latest Star Wars series, the one we're talking about, just the trilogy, I really liked Rey as a character in The Force Awakens. I really liked her. I was really excited. And I really liked Finn. I thought he had an interesting story. I did prefer Rey at the time in terms of just me being interested in a character. That being said, what really sold the entirety of the cast was the chemistry of those new characters. Like, honestly, I know a lot of people were like, we want more of, Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Leia. They were all like, oh yeah, we need all the old people back. I wasn't worried about bringing them back. I was excited with how they might be able to do it, but I wasn't like dying for them to bring back like these characters in big, big, big ways. I wanted them to do the characters right, but the thing was that I thought Rey, Finn, and Poe had great chemistry, and it wasn't like they exhausted that chemistry in the first movie.
Well, I mean, they even separated Poe in the first movie. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. They didn't even exhaust the idea. It wasn't like they were like, okay, well, now we have to separate the characters because we need to move into a new story.
I think in The Last Jedi, it would have worked better if they had, like, for story reasons, they did kind of have to separate Rey. She did have to go the sort of Luke Skywalker route, literally. But, you separate Rey and Finn, and then Finn and Poe get to have their little Han Solo and Leia relationship like in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, it's just such a strange thing to me that so many of these movies and stories, trilogies, however, like, no matter what it is, separating the best characters is a tenet of so many stories. And I'm not like opposed to it on its face, but so many characters do it and then they don't bring it back, or so many movies do it and then they don't bring it back in a meaningful way. It's one thing for Rey to have separated from the team in The Last Jedi, but did she have to be separated for the entire movie? No. Did we have to, like, it's one thing to use these things to create tension and develop characters in different ways, but I just really felt like in The Force Awakens, Rey and Finn had a great chemistry. They had not only was it a good chemistry, but it was an interesting one in that you didn't really know where it was going, Like, there was almost an element of like friendship, but like not really something more, but like maybe, I don't know which one of these is going to be the Jedi here. What's the role, what's going on? And Finn had so much to do. He had so much to do that you could have, that's the funniest thing, or the saddest thing about the Last Jedi is that Finn had so much to do, and then they gave him the screen time, and like they really botched him in the third movie. But in The Last Jedi, they had a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And then they threw away his entire arc with that Canto Bight casino arc. And it's like, hey, Finn has so much to do. This dude is an ex-stormtrooper who like deserted his team and has a vendetta against Captain Phasma. How is this not like an arc here? Like, why? Like, I'm okay with him if he separates. If you do it right, no one questions separating people and going along these different routes. But why did he not do something useful? It's like, I'm not opposed to the fact that him and what's that girl's name? Rose. I'm not opposed to the fact that him and Rose left the team and went and did something on their own if it was like just way more relevant to their own stories, not even relevant to the main arc. I think it should have been, but like, if it still had the side mission quality that we know it did, it would have been useful if it really did something for Finn as a character, or even done something for Rose and Finn as a character at the same time. But it just did absolutely nothing for the entire story. And it just makes you want to turn off the TV.
It also took up a good chunk of the movie.
Yeah. And it wasn't even exciting. It wasn't even like a cool sequence.
The last time I rewatched The Last Jedi, I actually just skipped all the bits. It was actually a much better movie.
I've seen so many like YouTube breakdowns of like how The Last Jedi works without the Canto Bight scene. Yeah, and like people constantly critique
it. Just flows better.
Yeah.
Like the movie it feels snappier. It feels more cohesive. And you're missing an entire section of the movie.
Yeah. But, so it's just strange to me. There's so much that it's like, it's kind of a headache almost to try and start to deconstruct all the ways, and like, not just the ways in which the trilogy went south, but the ways in which it could have gone so greatly. Like it actually, this is gonna like, it actually wouldn't have been that hard to make it really good.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I think the common criticism that I disagree with is that The Last Jedi is what ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Jedi didn't ruin it. It was the response to fan backlash that ruined it, because you could be annoyed at what they did in The Last Jedi, but you cannot say that The Last Jedi put them in a corner where they couldn't do anything.
I think he did load the gun. I think he loaded the gun. I think it's fair to say that.
The thing is, The Last Jedi, if you look at the way the movie ended, it left you with a clean slate for where you could go in the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
the worst that you could say that it did is it cut off Snoke and it cut off Luke from being players in the next movie. Mm-hmm. That's the worst that you can say that it did in terms of your options in the next movie.
Yeah.
But in terms of what you could do with the third movie, it left the slate clean. You could have gone anywhere with it. But there was so much fan backlash, and Disney's response to that was basically to start plugging all the leaking holes and never move on to a new movie. But my opinion is that Last Jedi left you with a clean slate for where you could go. And they decided to go back and just change everything.
Yeah, and as someone who was more disparaging of The Last Jedi as a movie, and even just like not just critically, but also just personally, like I wouldn't prefer the choices that they made or the movie in general. There were a lot of problems with the movie that I had. It didn't make me feel like there was no hope for The Rise of Skywalker. I was like, there's still plenty of things to do here. There's plenty of directions to go. It's just... And what's strange, too, is that The Rise of Skywalker was such a response to the fan backlash and so much retconning and so much like Frankenstein's monster type of building where they were just like constantly, every scene was trying to communicate a specific message that had nothing to do with the story. They were abusing so many things. And I'm a big fan of Easter eggs. I love callbacks to previous movies, but I get really tired of the fact that I feel like all that Star Wars has become as a property right now is just like trying to remind people of things they love, not giving them new things to love. Yeah. And The Rise of Skywalker did that a lot, as well as all the retconning. But it's kind of strange that they went down that route because it didn't look like they were going to do that after The Last Jedi, because Rian Johnson saw the backlash and held up a middle finger. Yeah. Like, he was like, don't care, not worried about you. I do what I want. You guys are all jerks. And whether or not you think that he was right or the fans were right is not relevant. Yeah. He stuck to his guns. And initially, it seemed that Disney and specifically Kathleen Kennedy were like, we're sticking to our guns. Yeah. They specifically called out the fans and alienated those fans worse. But what's interesting is that when we look back now, as like historically looking at the films, it's like, oh yeah, well, people hated that movie is kind of the idea. But it's like, when the movie came out, I say it was half and half. I think
it's still half and half for the most part.
So
I still see a lot of love for the movie.
It's strange that they went... That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's strange that instead of just saying, well, we've made this decision, we're going to live with it and try and, make the most of it and continue with a good story. They could have done all of the fan service that they did in The Rise of Skywalker while still following at least something in the spirit of Rian Johnson's movie. Because Rian Johnson, even though the spirit of Rian Johnson's movie was not cohesive to a lot of Star Wars spirit, like it really did feel like heresy in the Star Wars world, that didn't mean that it ruined everything coming after it. Yeah. You could have just easily picked back up and like, even Abrams could have softly like, caressed the fans back into being like, okay, well, he's got a few things on track. He could have even, I would have been happier if they just straight up retconned and brought Luke back to life. I would have been more okay with being like, oh yeah, by the way, that was a dupe. We duped you. He didn't actually die, because like now we look back, it's like, oh, well, obviously he did, but they could have forced science their way out of that death. Yeah. It could have been open-ended. They could have brought him back and had him do something more inspiring, more exciting. There were ways that they could have made both sides of the fans happy without throwing Rian Johnson under the bus.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the response that I've seen to The Last Jedi is that it seems like a lot of the people that love it are not Star Wars fans. It seems like the people that really got upset over it were Star Wars fans, and the people that really liked it were actually people who weren't all that big on Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because Rian Johnson, what he brought to the movie was stuff that is, stuff that Star Wars hadn't really seen before, like cinematically. He brought like a certain style that just isn't normally what you would see out of Star Wars. Like, I think Abrams fit really well into the Star Wars mold.
Well, I loved his visual style.
And
for Star Wars. But the trailer Rian Johnson for The Last Jedi was gorgeous.
Rian Johnson's style is sort of built on this really like mechanical, like everything clicks together. Everything's really tightly constructed. Like, he spends a lot of time writing his movies. Something like Knives Out is so like every piece of it is just so particular in the way that he shoots his movies and the framing. It's like there's a certain just style to it that I think he really brought to The Last Jedi in some ways. And in some ways, I feel like he was almost overwhelmed by how much he had to deal with. Because certain parts of the movie, I think, work really well and work really interestingly in a way that Star Wars had never worked before. But areas of it where I think it just felt bloated, like especially with Finn. I think it was like he had these ideas for what he wanted to do with Luke and what he wanted to do with Rey and what he wanted to do with Kylo Ren. And he was like, well, crap, I still got all these other characters that I got to deal with. And I think it just ended up getting so big.
Also,
and
that's
so
something
bloated.
you see when a great director, or not even just a great like small director, because I wouldn't say he was like a small time director before this, but the more indie directors or the artsy directors that make really good films, but they're not like widely massive like blockbuster directors that get these big jobs, but they become beholden to these executives at these massive studios like Disney, and then you see. I mean, I can't even think of any, I'm sure you could probably think of an example, but like, this is not the first time that we've seen a director that had a ton of potential and that has done great movies, like really leave us like scratching our heads after they get a hold of a massive franchise.
Oh, yeah, you look at Colin Trevorrow, who's supposed to do Rise of Skywalker. He did Jurassic World. Prior to that, he had only done, I think, like one indie movie.
Yeah. And I feel like this happened in in my opinion, in some of the like Marvel movies as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like Taika Waititi. Mm-hmm. I mean, which I know that a lot of people do like Thor Ragnarok, but like everything I've seen from Taika Waititi outside of Thor Ragnarok, I adored. And while I do think that he did okay with like conveying some of his style, but it was so clearly not just like his movie though. It was like it had a lot of him in it, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like it was clearly curated by the studio, and it just makes me. I almost think that it's better to not get big directors or big artistic direction directors behind these types of big studio films because it's being run by the executives.
Well, there's always a battle of like who's going to win out. Like if you look at Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, it's clear that Christopher Nolan won out in that sort of artistic versus executive war. Somebody like Zack Snyder, it's clear that it was. Like, I mean, people can argue whether it would have been better if he fully won out, but I don't think he fully won out that war.
Yeah.
Even though you can tell it's absolutely his movies, but you can also tell how much of a studio influence there was there.
Yeah.
And even you take Mark Webb, who did the two Amazing Spider-Man movies, you can see a lot of his style in the first Amazing Spider-Man, but the second one, I would not be able to tell that that's a Mark Webb movie in most ways. Yeah, there's always that war.
Yeah, I feel like that's got to change soon though, because on one hand, I tend to think like, well, maybe they just shouldn't get these big directors. Like if they want control over these movies, they should get stand-ins who can direct actors and who can direct, the set without being like this massive creative control. But then on the flip side, I feel like we're seeing the landscape change lately with the ideas of these, extended cuts and these director's cuts being really popular. HBO Max picking up, the Justice League cut from Zack Snyder, like we've talked about. Like, I'm like, at what point are these studios going to start saying, oh, well, we'll actually let you do your thing for once. We'll just start by letting you do your thing. Like how does the next superhero movie, after seeing all the things that have happened, not like when they hire a director like Zack Snyder or someone who's very stylistic and wants to do their thing, it's like, I know that like if they're going to make a bad movie or you think it's not the right movie, then maybe you should do the reshoots or change the story or step in, have these executive producers handle things. But like at what point can you not just like pick your director and let them have the movie?
Yeah.
Like live or die.
Well, I was reading stuff that David Ayer, who did Suicide Squad, was saying about because he's been a lot more open about what happened to Suicide Squad, and he basically said that like I can't remember whether it was like midway through shooting or if it was after they were done. I think it was after they were done shooting because it was after Batman v Superman came out. But he said that the two things that influenced that movie were the fact that critics destroyed Batman v Superman and Deadpool was a success. Those two things, because I think Deadpool came out that February,
so
Batman v Superman came out.
Like, hold up.
I think they had finished shooting, but they weren't. I'm not sure they were super confident in it already, just because like it's Suicide Squad. I don't think that the studios were like, Suicide Squad's going to be a massive hit.
Yeah.
Like, they just weren't sure. And then Batman v Superman gets just chewed up, and Deadpool's a huge success. And they were like,
That's why it's such a weird editing movie. Yeah. Like, the editing in that movie, there were a lot of problems with the movie, but like the editing specifically and the way that it felt was so awkward.
Well, you could tell in that movie that it wasn't just that there were reshoots, but that the entire movie was restructured.
Yeah.
Like the movie has... And the movie is so like confusing to watch because you're introduced to the main characters 3 times in a row, like it's the first time. Like every one of the scenes where you're introduced to the characters could have been the first one because you're told the exact same things about them over and over again. And I think I can't remember whether he said how it started, but I want to say that he was saying like a lot of the stuff that's shown early on was not supposed to be until later, or God, I can't remember, but it was totally different structure wise, than it came out to be, and it's very clear.
Yeah,
that was not how it was intended.
I just wonder when these studios are going to learn or pick a side. You know, it's really just the flip flopping that bothers me. It's like pick whether you're going to have all the control and do what you want from the start, or if you're going to hand the movies off to these directors.
I think The Last Jedi's fan backlash definitely didn't help directors get more control.
Yeah,
because I think Rian Johnson did get to do most of what he did, or most of what he wanted to do in that movie. At the time,
Kathleen Kennedy said, "We trust him fully. We want him. Yeah. We want his vision for Star Wars. All that we want it to be the new vision for Star Wars. Yeah. He's the best director we've ever seen. We want him to direct everything."
No, actually, I do think out of all the directors that they've ever gotten for Star Wars movies, Rian Johnson is the best director that they've gotten. I think he's a far better director than J.J. Abrams, and I think he's a better director than George Lucas, Irvin Kershner. I can't remember the guy that did Return of the Jedi, but I think like quality wise, if you look at the rest of his filmography, he's the best
at what he's done. I wouldn't say just based off of The Last Jedi.
No, not based off the last
him as a director.
Not based off of The Last Jedi. I'm talking about based off of his abilities and based off of his filmography.
To be sure.
Yeah, I mean, Looper is still one of the best sci-fi movies of the last decade, at least. Like his Knives Out was fantastic. Like his filmography is fantastic, with the exception of The Last Jedi. But, so to say that he's the best director to come out of Star Wars, like, yeah, I mean, I agree with that for sure. But
I would say at directing, I wouldn't say that he, like, obviously he didn't put out the best Star Wars movie. Just to make that clear before we get like hate comments like all day long.
But better than The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's something to be said for him sticking to his guns and making the movie that he wanted to make versus what happened to The Rise of Skywalker. Because like, at least when I was watching The Last Jedi and disagreeing, disliking things or having troubles with it, I was thinking like, I don't know if I like this. There are pieces that I like. There are things I was involved in the movie.
Yeah.
The Rise of Skywalker was such a lifeless movie that I wasn't even involved. There were times in the theater where I laughed out loud, like multiple. I wanted to laugh at every scene. Honestly, if I wasn't invested in Star Wars, I would have just gotten up and left. Like if I wasn't just like, I need to see this through to see what happened. So, but yeah, to put a cap on that, it's nice to see someone like John Boyega kind of speaking out. I don't know if he said like definitive statements, but the sentiment and the statement I believe he's made has been like pretty much like, he is not just disparaged Star Wars or Disney, working for Disney. And he hasn't been like totally aggressive or mean about it, but he's pretty much said, he's not going to be in anything in the future. He's not, whereas a lot of the actors, which I think a lot of them are moving away now, but the idea might have been to have him in the future, be on, on call for different projects. He's a character in the universe now. They all return and come back and stuff. Like he's like, no, I'm done with Disney. Like I don't want to work for them anymore. So it's cool to see him like stand up and say that. And he said, respectively, that he's had the conversation with Disney, and that I think I don't know if they learned anything from it, but like that they were understanding, and they talked to him about it, and they kind of, obviously they didn't come to an agreement, so he rejoined Star Wars or do anything. I don't think anyone's particularly worried about it. I think most people, I would even say people that liked something like The Last Jedi and the people that hated it are probably just like, all right, let's just clean the slate. So I don't think there'll be a lot of returning to that anytime soon. But while we're on the subject of Star Wars, I know we've been on it for a minute. I have to amend. I didn't want to talk about The Mandalorian season 2 anymore after the first episode, just because I don't want to review every episode or anything on the podcast. But episode 3 has come out, and because we disparaged the series in the other episode that we did, talking about the first season and some of its strengths and weaknesses, episode 3 has come out, and just like that, just like the first season, we got 2 episodes of just wandering around, doing nothing of note, no interesting characters, no interesting plots, and only vaguely interesting visual attractions. And episode 3, absolute banger. Full on plot, awesome characters, awesome reveals, awesome everything. Production, you can just see where their budgets go. Yeah. Like full on multiple Mandalorians join in. I don't know if you remember from the Clone Wars, one of the Mandalorians from the Clone Wars, specifically the last season of Clone Wars. I don't know if she was in the others. Played by Katie Sackhoff, comes in and total callback to the Clone Wars. Character looks just like her, acts just like her. Awesome sequences, like action sequences. I mean, you can still like nitpick for like story, but just like the kind of episode where you're like, oh yes, this is awesome. This is Star Wars. This is the Mandalorian. They're kicking butt. Like there's interesting characters. There's an interesting plot going on with where they're going. There's callbacks everywhere. It's a cool planet. It's a cool, it's just, it blows my mind the way this series is like, give me 5 amazing episodes instead of 8 episodes where 3 or 4 of them are decent. It's like, just, if they just could keep the momentum, because episode 2 was just another side mission. It was just like nothing happened. It was better than the first, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't like awful. It was just like, what's going on? Nothing's really happening here. Just another side mission. And like we said about anthologies, you know, we don't have to retread the conversation we've had about anthologies in the past. But you know, I get that like some episodes are going to be less strong than others when you're doing kind of side quest mission type of series, but the lack of substance across the side mission episodes is really like, I watched episode 2 and 3 back to back because I didn't catch up on it on episode 2 the week that it came out. So it was like the contrast of watching episode 2. I was so uninterested. I was just like, I don't even know if I want to watch the next episode yet, but I'll stick with it. Whatever. Turn it on. All of a sudden, I'm like, can't wait for episode 4. Like, it's just, I don't understand. But another interesting story that I saw this week was the Marvel's Avengers Endgame, or not Endgame. I don't know why I said Endgame. It's what I think about when I think about Marvel these days. But the game, the video game that came out a few months back has absolutely tanked, so much so as to apparently lose the company millions and millions of dollars. And it's just really strange to me because essentially the game came out, it's kind of a games as a service kind of game, meant to be a game that lasts and continues to update and so forth. It had a big trailer at, I think it might have been E3. It had a big trailer, big hype around it for a a story-based game. It's got multiplayer too. But I would say it's essentially the first, like, at least big budget game in which you play as Avengers. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's made by Square Enix. So, I mean, that's a big studio attached to it that you would think, they make good games, or at least really beloved games. And I mean, I can't go on to Twitch to watch a stream without getting an ad for this game. I can't. Like, there was so much hype around the game. They paid tons of big streamers to play it when it came out, so on and so forth. And I can't wrap my brain around how you can botch this property so hard. Like, you have Avengers. Whether or not you don't even have to care about superheroes or Marvel to go, wow, a video game in which I get to play as these, like, iconic, superpowered heroes sounds like a great idea, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you botch that?
Well, I didn't see like a poor reception for the game, like in terms of the gameplay. I don't know enough about it, but I thought it was more of a microtransaction thing. I wanted to say a lot of people's issues with it were the sort of pay to play stuff after you already pay $60 for the game.
Yeah, you pay $60. That's what games as a service is not something that I like despise. I don't want to pay full price at the start for a game and then have to pay more. Like if you give me a free game and then you want me to pay for DLCs or new expansions, or even if you charged me yearly, if I wanted to pay it or whatever, like some kind of like smaller fee, I'd be okay with that. But $60 then paying more is a problem. But even aside from that, I think that probably did rustle some feathers, but supposedly the game is more kind of almost Destiny 1-ish in that it uses a lot of like rank up systems and like getting new loot and types of things, but they didn't do that particularly well. And it's like, it's a fun game. It's a cool looking game, but basically it just kind of fell off. And what I just can't understand is how you can have such a gold mine of a property on a franchise that's already massive, raking in money. Not only just raking in money from the films, but like it's built up. You've got Avengers, everything. Like you have so many eyes that would love to play as these characters in any kind of video game. They want to play. I mean, you can't tell me that people wouldn't want to play Avengers on their phone. Kids, teenagers, adults, people play mobile games all the time. I mean, like even games like Fortnite, Call of Duty are big. PUBG, big on mobile devices. PC play. Console play. So tell me why, like, how is it hard to come up with an idea that's going to actually hit? Like you have all the money in the world in this franchise. You got a big studio behind it. Like, how have we not gotten, like, why would you, the first thing I would want to do as like, if I was the executive of this company is be like, we're going cross-platform, multiplayer, like, we want it to be hip. We want it to be like all the things that people love. I mean, like Fortnite is still, even as it's fallen off, it's a massive game. And like, make it cross-platform. Let everyone play and let them play against each other. Team up, like everybody. I don't care how you do it. No one is going to dislike playing as Captain America while their friend plays as Iron Man, and they team up and they fight people on their phones or on their computers or on their consoles or whatever it is. How do you botch this? How did we get like this big budget games made by Square Enix that was just a vaguely entertaining story mode?
I'm just not, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of that like type of game that they're doing. The whole like everybody's got like an RPG style level up system. Yeah. And you know, you get your little skill branch or whatever. I'm not a huge fan of that. Because I was kind of excited for the game when they announced it, because Insomniac Games' Spider-Man game was so awesome. And they just came out with the Miles Morales one, and that one looked great too. And that's very much like a classic Spider-Man game, but they did it so well. It's so good. I was kind of hoping the Avengers game would be more like that. But when I saw that it was like the rank up, like, you know, hit points bounce off the enemies every time that you hit them type thing, I wasn't a big fan of that. And even there's a new Batman game coming out. I think it's an Xbox exclusive maybe, called Gotham Knights, and it's made by the people who made the one Arkham game that wasn't made by Rocksteady, Arkham Origins, which I thought was good. But I was hoping they were coming out with like a new Arkham style game. But they basically, it kind of looks like Arkham, but it's going to be kind of like this Avengers game where it's, you know, hit points and level up and online and just like I just don't care. It's a trend that I feel like works really well in some games and works really well in some type of games, but I don't like the whole I don't like the microtransactions, and I'm not a big fan of the whole like RPG element and everything. Like not every game needs a rank up system for everything. Like I can just play as Batman and just be Batman. Like, I don't need Batman level 56.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just odd because I could understand it 10 years ago getting bad video games based on movies. But now with the video game market being so big, I feel like not only is it so big, video games, online, even like battle royale games being so big, it's such a cultural thing now, especially among young people. It's not just like, oh, video games are big. It's kids. Like this is what kids do now, as opposed to playing like sports more so. So how you would not see the opportunity in the market and try to chase that down as a big giant in the space is just baffling to me, that you wouldn't be able to put it behind it and that you wouldn't set it up for success in the way that just makes sense to me, I guess. Like, it's just strange. I don't think that any big budget game that's going to have a multiplayer or be based on multiplayer should be doing anything that's not cross-platform right now, too. That's the other thing. Cross-platform is the new way. Like, all the biggest, newest games are starting to head that way. And I think that it's the best thing to happen to games probably in my entire lifetime. From the time that I was like 7 years old playing PlayStation 2, like the very second that playing the PlayStation 3 online games became popular, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, there was such a problem of not being able to play with your friends if you didn't have the same console. And the fact that they fixed that here in 2020, the new Call of Duty games are all cross-platform. Fortnite is cross-platform all the way across to mobile devices. Like, and what that did for, I mean, obviously I think Fortnite would have blown up and still been as big as it was, maybe without like mobile or super cross-platform, but it really boosted the game for especially kids, because the amount of people who have an Xbox versus a PlayStation versus a PC, I mean, for the longest time, once I became a PC gamer, there were a lot of my friends that kind of got left behind because they were still playing on their PlayStation 4. And so the fact that you could go back and join them now, I mean, Apex Legends is crossplay now. So it's like, this is the new wave. Why would Marvel not be like, wow, we have one of the most recognizable franchises in the world. Let's pay a big developer to make a really great game that will last a really long time, that will update with the franchise. Like, think about, that's the other thing. Marvel's going to keep going. Marvel's got all these characters, all these movies coming out. Why would you not like try and, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking too big brain. Like, maybe they're just like, we'll make a quick buck making a Marvel game. But it's like, why wouldn't you put something that almost lives next to the movies? Why wouldn't you put something into play? Kind of like, what Fortnite does is they're constantly updating. They're constantly getting partnerships with other movies and artists and, skins and things like that. It's like, why would you not have a game in which you have a fun multiplayer system? And as new movies come out, you get the new skins from the movies, you get the new missions from the movies, you get new maps from the movies. You get, like, why would you not try and build an infrastructure that lives around that? And like, maybe this is just me being like trying to be visionary, and they're not thinking that far ahead, or that's not where the money is for them right now. I mean, they've got plenty of things on their plate to make them money. So maybe it's just, that's not what they're worried about, but it's just, I feel like it's such a missed opportunity, because you see games like Call of Duty, like Fortnite, like whatever the next big game is going to be. You see them do this, and then it's like, and they don't even have, they're building their IP from the ground up. Marvel has the IP from the start. So it just, I don't know. It's strange to me, but the game has supposedly lost, I think, 96% of its player base. Yeah. There's less than 1,000 people playing at a time now. And that is,
well, I mean, it's possible they could bring some of them back, though.
Yeah,
I mean, Rainbow Six Siege.
Well, I was about to say, we've seen the
massive amount of its player base, and it's now one of the biggest PC games.
People are turning around games.
I don't feel like it's going to happen for the Avengers, but maybe. I don't know.
We'll see, but I thought it was interesting. But moving into the next topic, A Quiet Place getting a spinoff movie. I guess I read that headline and just saying that it was a green lit. It just kind of struck me weird, because I love A Quiet Place 1. Universally acclaimed movie. I mean, It's a good movie. A lot of people liked it. People love John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. Like, I think it can be a cash cow property. It didn't really feel like, when I watched the movie, like it was a franchise movie.
Yeah.
But I can at least see getting a trilogy out of it. I can see, and that being said, if you take a step back and look at the world and the times that they live in the movie, I could see there being world building possibilities. I don't know that they actually did any world building in the movie, but I could see the seeds just existing. I don't think they're growing yet, but there's seeds that could exist. But it's just strange that to me to go ahead and like greenlight that kind of thing when we're about to get A Quiet Place 2, which it was supposed to come out this year, but it got pushed back to I think it's coming out like March or something.
Yeah, a full year.
Yeah, it got pushed back. It was like one of the first movies to get pushed back from COVID. But it got pushed back, and I'm very interested. Like, I mean, when it comes out, I'll go to the theater and see it immediately. But it wasn't like a movie that I'm like, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, they're making another one. I kind of didn't expect that, but go ahead, cool, just go ahead and do one. That's fine. But I feel like when the series, I mean, obviously the first movie is proven, but I don't feel like it's proven as a franchise yet. So to go ahead and be like, we're going to do a spinoff movie, I'm like, I don't know that I care about this without Emily Blunt and John Krasinski yet. Like, I feel like they need to show something. And so I originally was, I saw the news and I was like, oh, I don't know that I'm even a fan of that. But then I like did a double take when I started looking into it and saw that Jeff Nichols is writing and directing it. And I was like, wait, when you say spinoff, I'm not going to lie also. Spinoffs for me kind of have a bad rep in my head where it's not that they can't be good, but I've never seen a spinoff be better than the original. And I've never seen a spinoff really. Maybe I'm missing one. You know, maybe they're out there. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I rarely find a spinoff series or even just movie like really hit. Like even if they're decent, I don't know if they justify their existence. And so I'm like typically against it. But then I see Jeff Nichols being tapped to write and direct it. And I'm like, wait a second. Like Jeff Nichols is a director that I guess I trust enough to be like, it's strange enough. He actually fits with the franchise to me. I'm like, wait, okay. I can see how this isn't like going to be a massive franchise, but like I can see him I feel like he played really well in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. I pretty much trust that if Jeff Nichols is attached to something, it's going to be a quality film. It's also really interesting because he hasn't made a movie since 2016 where he had Midnight Special and Loving come out in the same year.
He hasn't made a movie since.
I
hadn't heard from him in a while.
He was writing a movie called, I think it was called Alien Nation, and it was a remake of an 80s like sci-fi movie, I think. I'm not really familiar with it. But he was writing it, and it was supposed to be like a really different take on it, and it was going to be like a studio movie for him, which he doesn't really do. And he was like talking about how excited he was for it, and he was working really hard on it, and he was writing it. And then I think it was when Fox got bought by Disney. There was he basically said like, I don't know if this movie's ever going to get made because, you know, it was a Fox, I think it's a 20th Century Fox movie. And I don't think Disney showed any interest in it. So it basically just got shelved. And he'd been working on it for like 3 years.
Wow.
And like writing it for 3 years. And it got shelved. So I was like, when I heard that, I was like, what's he going to do next? Because it takes him a long time to work on movies.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, it normally takes him like 4 years to come out with a movie. And he just spent 4 years on one movie that's not going to get made now.
Yeah.
So seeing him attached to this, I'm actually really excited for.
I think his projected release date is not far either. I think it's like 2022.
Well, I'm sure. I think he's also working like with Krasinski on it.
Yeah,
too.
I
Like,
think
it's not just.
It's supposedly a story or a concept from Krasinski himself. Like it's an idea that he had. I mean, obviously, I doubt it's like fully fleshed out, but it's like it's a concept from Krasinski. So, like I said, I was like very much like, who would want that? But then I'm like, okay, Jeff Nichols. I'm not even a massive fan of the director. I know you're a big fan of his work. But I enjoy his movies, but most specifically, what I know from the movies that I've seen of his is that he knows how to tell a story, which is the most important part of directing, contrary to popular belief. But he really knows how to tell a story, and I think that his style really works in the Quiet Place universe because it doesn't sound like they're just like when they say spinoff or they're making this into a series, it doesn't make it seem like they're trying to turn it into a big franchise, like a blockbuster. Like it's obviously a blockbuster, but it's like, oh wait, actually this might have a niche of its own.
One of the things that I know about Jeff Nichols that it's why I always look forward to everything that he does is that he's never going to do something that he doesn't want to do. Mm-hmm. Like he's never going to work on a movie that he's not happy with. Like because he was offered Aquaman. Which is kind of a bizarre choice, but he was offered Aquaman and he just knew that he wouldn't be happy doing a studio movie like that. So the fact that he is moving into a studio movie, to me tells me that he trusts that they're going to let him do what he wants.
Almost makes it seem like it was like maybe he was. I mean, I have no idea what the process was like, but like maybe he knows John Krasinski or was handpicked by John Krasinski and. I wouldn't say like I have no idea how closely they would work, but it sounds like almost like he trusts
I
the
feel
person that's lording over him.
I feel confident that if he's working on it, he's going to get to do what he wants to do.
Yeah. So I'm I went from being like, Quiet Place spinoff to, ooh, that sounds cool. Like that actually could spark something. Because the other thing is, I mean, if on the flip side, if you look at Krasinski's career and what he's trying to do, I mean, these are his movies. So it almost, I thought it was just kind of, he just wrote and directed a movie because why not? He's talented. But it actually is seeming like as he's trying to build this out, like maybe he's actually like, maybe he's got a longer plan. Like he's already got a plan for not just the movies, but for his career. Like obviously, like you see actors step into directorial roles, sometimes, and sometimes they step right back out, or sometimes they become more directors than actors, or trying to balance them. But I can see, as the pieces are starting to come together, I can see kind of a longer term plan, like what if they are trying to build this into a world, into a series that he can produce and, something that can really bolster his career. Not that he would move out of acting, but, to really kind of, I guess, move up the ladder in terms of legacy. So, I mean, I'm, like I said, I went from being like, to like, I can see that. So, yeah. But, another thing that I saw this week though, which I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, is I just did a double take when I read this. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is remaking The Scorpion King. And now I have to go in with clarifications because that's the headline. And it's like, what? Now the actual scoop is that it's his production company that he co-owns with someone else are going to be taking on a remake of the Scorpion King franchise, and he is not going to be playing the Scorpion King.
I'm just not sure that's a great idea because I don't really know how you improve on perfection.
That's not what I expected you to say. Well, okay, but what's interesting though is that on one hand, I read that he's not going to be playing the Scorpion King, and I was like, well, obviously, like that's a good idea. And then I was like, actually, I don't know, because The Rock I almost feel like you could get more press out of the movie, as well as possibly a better movie if The Rock went and remade a movie that he was already starred in, playing the character, like at a completely different time in the character's life, playing a completely different thing. I almost feel like that would be more endearing than just being like, oh, well, his production company's like producing a movie. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't feel like, I almost would like it if he came out and said, I'm going to right the wrongs of my past. It was like his first ever like appearance in a movie was like when he played the Scorpion King in the Mummy Returns, wasn't it? Or Mummy 2?
Yeah.
And then his first, like, I think feature film where he actually played a leading role was the Scorpion King. And so like, I think it would actually be like, if you're going to put the time and money into this kind of thing, I don't think it's a bad idea to have him return to the role, because he wasn't anything like the blockbuster hit that he is now. And so because my problem is, would anyone care about that franchise without him?
Does anyone care about that franchise at all?
Yeah, with him, they don't care. Like people, a lot of people. I think it has name recognition.
It's just that's just one of those bizarre decisions.
It just seems like a bizarre decision.
Where like out of all the things that people are interested in and want to see, like studios really think that Scorpion King remake is what people need right now. That's why I'm saying more. He'd have more momentum if he said, guys, I'm coming out to right the wrongs. I'm going to fix this movie. I'm going to fix this franchise. I'm the Scorpion King again, and I'm going back and revisiting my first movie. Yeah. I feel like that's at least more press, more hype, more interest around the movie. Because otherwise, I'm like, I don't see that happening. I also don't see it being good. I mean, I know The Rock is like the highest paid actor in the world right now, and that he carries a lot of weight and everyone loves him. I love him. But like, I mean, it's universally accepted that he doesn't make great movies and that he's not like some like fantastic actor. It's just something about the actor himself that just carries a certain kind of weight that's just so attractive and lovable to people as a personality that he carries a lot of sway. And I think he has a lot of global appeal that really carries his movies through. Many of his movies that don't even do that well in the US do really well worldwide. So, and I mean, at that point, he's the one making the money. I trust him to know how to make the money, but it's just like, at what point does he start like making good movies? Like at what point is like, can we like get
something good here.
Hopefully it starts with the Scorpion King.
Scorpion King. Dwayne the Rock Johnson produces Scorpion King to 9 out of 10 reviews. But I don't know. I love The Rock so much that I want to see him like kill it in some movies. And I know that Black Adam is like one of his upcoming roles that people are kind of excited about.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to see where that goes. It could really be, I wouldn't say breakout, but his breakout critically, or, on more of because I hate to say he's not like, he does movies that aren't like highly respected in the film world, in the pretentious, like, review critic world, award world. He does very much just throwaway movies that somehow make him millions and millions of dollars. He's always working. He's always doing stuff. I
want to say Jumanji is like the most well-received movie he's done recently.
Yeah. So he does these kinds of movies, but I actually feel like, obviously, I don't think he was a good actor when he started out. I mean, he was obviously a novice, and, he came from so many other industries that it was kind of weird. And I think he faced a lot of adversity getting into acting and joining the Hollywood industry. That being said, while I wouldn't say that anyone thinks he's the greatest actor in the world, I think he's vastly improved. And I think he's very likable on screen. Yeah. Whether or not you think he has like the range or
he's
the dramatic
the reason
ability
that anybody sees his movies.
Yeah. So, I think he's got the talent. I mean, I think he's got the work ethic and the talent to do so many things. I mean, I just heard, what was it? You're Welcome from Moana, the song just went like quadruple platinum, I think.
That's probably his best role.
Yeah.
I don't mean that sarcastically at all. Like he's great in that movie.
Yeah, that movie is great. That song is great. Yeah. So it's like I don't think that, we say that he does like kind of really not great movies, or he also targets audiences that are not you or me, or typical, action, adventure, fantasy, science fiction audiences, or even drama, critically acclaimed movies, or award-winning films. He doesn't really target that audience. So I understand that maybe it's just a choice that he makes to go in a different direction. But I really think he actually has the chops to like worm his way into that, I guess, that echelon of other actors and directors and producers and films. So it's like, I just have to wonder at what point is he going to do that? I want to see it. Like, I guess I just want to support The Rock because he's so like, I think everyone just universally likes him. I want to support the movies he comes out with, but sometimes, you go see Skyscraper and you're like, dude, but
yeah, I mean, I think he probably likes doing the type of movies that he likes to do. I mean, there's a clear trend between like San Andreas, Rampage, and Skyscraper. It's all movies where the world's about to end and Dwayne Johnson has to come in and save it. Like that's the premise of his movies, is that he's got to come. It could still
be a great movie though too.
He's just got to come be like an action hero, and they're always really big and dumb and cheesy. But I mean, there's some entertainment value in them, but they're just,
I think he could do both.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I think
I enjoyed watching him climb a skyscraper using duct tape in Skyscraper. Yeah, that was fun.
I mean, one thing you can say is that, there are some movies that are not going to be great movies. You go see them anyway, and then you're like, what was wrong with me? Whenever I do see The Rock movie and you see him climbing the side of skyscrapers with duct tape, like, I just clap. I'm not like, I don't, like if it was anyone else, I'd be like, are you serious? What am I watching right now? But like when I see the Rock do it, I'm like, of course he did. He's a genius. No one else could climb that skyscraper with duct tape.
Tom Cruise could.
Tom Cruise could. But alas. Anyway, that wraps up, I think, about everything for today's podcast. This has been episode 8 of the Cortright cast. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like and a subscribe on the channel. And we will see you guys in the next episode.